Hello friends and colleagues. This video is an invitation and a short introduction to an event that will be taking place in the Trust soon. Sadly, it isn't a big party, just another Teams. But I hope that you'll join us because this is an important one. It's about us, it's about staff burnout and the impact of the pandemic, and it's about beginning our rehabilitation post-COVID. Now, I suspect I've already lost some of you. Those of you still sticking with me might be rolling your eyes, maybe giving me the hand at the thought of this topic. If I could assess your response, I can imagine that a few of you might even be having a proper, full-on, rageful, tachycardic adverse reaction at the idea of a Schwartz round about staff rehab. I fully appreciate the sentiment of not having much time for this. Even at the best of times, a lot of us consider this sort of thing to be much too soft and fluffy. Existential, intangible rubbish. No thanks. I've got real work to do, all right? And of course you are right. We are living in a lockdown, upside-down nightmare world. Our working practices have changed. Our workload has grown. We are living the exponential graphs. Moreover, we are healthcare workers, we're science folk, and we quite rightly know that it is science that we need to get us through this, not fluff. And again, you're right. So before you all switch off, I'm going to give you some science. Here, a solid chemical equation. Some of you may recognise it. It's the equation that explains the effect of acid rain on our buildings. And this is a statue of George Washington. You can find it on the Memorial Arch at the foot of Fifth Avenue in New York. It was erected there in 1944. And this is what it looked like 60 years later. The damage, the severe erosion of the facial features has been caused by this reaction. We all know that sulfuric acid is produced when sulfur dioxide is released into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels, in this case by coal-burning industrial plants in the Midwest and intense Fifth Avenue traffic. The sulfur dioxide escaping into the air dissolves in cloud water, making sulfuric acid, and consequently rainwater that's more acidic than normal. The acid rain causes a chemical weathering reaction whereby calcium carbonate, the major component of the marble in statues and buildings, is transformed into a salt, calcium sulfate. The calcium sulfate salt is highly soluble in water and hence it gets washed away. What this reaction demonstrates is a double replacement reaction whereby putting AB and CD together gives you two new compounds, AC and BD. So we've looked at an equation which describes the complete transformation of substances by their chemical reaction with each other. And that scientific demonstration brings me to the main idea I want to put to you, an idea explained by Carl Jung. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." What Jung is asking us to contemplate is how, in the same way as the chemical substances, the calcium carbonate, the sulfuric acid, in the same way as these substances react and are transformed by the reaction into calcium sulfate, carbon dioxide and water, so too, he suggests, might people be transformed by their interaction or reaction with each other. Let's apply this to the interaction between patients and healthcare workers. We're getting better at focusing on the patient holistically, the patient journey, the patient experience. We recognise how looming and how significant the experience of illness and hospitalisation is for patients, how it forms a real part of their life story. We're perhaps not quite so ready to acknowledge the point that Jung is making, whereby if our patients' experiences are transformative for them, how can they not be transformative for us? There's a lot more to say here. Not all meetings are transformative, and this isn't a perfect metaphor. Perhaps some of you will skillfully pull it apart with reference to other chemical reactions. But I think an important thing to point out here is that as a culture, we have a tendency to work hard at preventing ourselves from being too greatly affected or too changed by our experiences and interaction with patients. Clearly, there are very good reasons for this. We have to get on with the job in hand. We need to remain intact, solid, and basically functional. We can't allow ourselves to be altered and used up. eroded and worn down by our work. So we've developed a culture of professionalism, a professional skin which affords us some resilience and defence and allows us to focus, stay on track, be methodical and cool-headed, and get the job that needs doing done well. We all recognise ourselves now, yes? So these features of our healthcare culture have evolved for very good reason. Trussed up in our armour, in our uniform, we are what we need to be. And most of the time, this works very well. But we also have to be pragmatic and acknowledge that now isn't most of the time. We are living through surreal times. Our professional skin cannot possibly be thick enough. Even armour is penetrable, and the load on us has become extremely heavy. No one should feel surprised to find themselves cracking up a bit under the strain. And at this particular time in 2020, 2021, there's something else to bear in mind. And it's this paradox, whereby just as the workload is growing and exerting bigger pressure on us, so too we find that the expectation of what we can cope with is also growing. Everyone is calling us heroes. We're being clapped, getting discounts and freebies, even free parking. We see ourselves depicted everywhere as heroes and angels, lauded and lionised. In some ways, the appreciation is incredible and nourishing. We feel galvanised to work harder and better to live up to the ideal of what we are supposed to have morphed into. But the problem is, we are not superheroes or super sheroes. We don't have superhuman strength. We don't have superhuman stamina or power to heal or bend time. We're actually just people. We're just people who, in fact, have many other roles and responsibilities outside our jobs, with all the normal joys, stresses, and strains that come with those. The paradox is that it is now, during these toughest of times, precisely when the task has become superhuman, precisely when we have been built up to expect more of ourselves than ever before, raised up so high by a public who need us to be superhuman, it is precisely now that the impact on us of falling short will be hardest felt by us. As the months of endurance continue, and we inevitably find ourselves struggling at times, maybe physically tired, maybe emotionally spent, maybe feeling professionally incompetent in new and unfamiliar environments, maybe feeling cynical and full of rage, not angelic at all. As we push on, we feel all the more disappointed in ourselves for not doing better, for not doing enough. Those moments of expectation versus reality can be quite brutal. Okay, so there's a lot more to be said on all of this, of course, but what I want to suggest to you is that if any of this introduction has resonated with you, if you can see yourself in some of what I've said in any of these drawings, then please come to our Schwartz Round. As a community, we'll make a start with untangling this mess together and begin our post-pandemic rehabilitation.